President William Ruto expected to hold discussions with social media site TikTok CEO Xu Ziqiu today as he seeks to have the site moderate its content within Kenya.
President Emmerson Mnangagwa extends voting by a day in Zimbabwe following delays in distribution of ballot papers in some regions, including Harare, as he seeks re-election.
And across the continent, mercenaries from Russian private militia Wagner Group threatened to march on Moscow again following reports that the leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was among 10 people killed after his plane was shot down yesterday.
Yes, it is the 24th of August, 2023. How hot is the coffee where you are? It is 15 degrees Celsius in Nairobi and promises to get even warmer during the day. This is Morning Cafe. My name is Freddy Ndimuli.
And I'm Flora Limuki. Did you know that at least 84% of youth between 18 to 29 spend their time on social media, and they are actively involved in YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, as well as Facebook. We have that conversation later on in the hour as we look into the social media pressure and how better you can use your social media for the right reasons and avoid the social media pressure that comes with it in this digital era.
And I'm usually standing in Ringita. Today I'll be taking a look at your feedback and the whole diary, what to expect in your 47 counties. And my Kisii proverb today, I promised Flora and Fred that I'll come with a Kisii proverb. The bush in which you hide has eyes. The bush in which you hide has eyes. That is the Kisii proverb this morning. Whether it's the National Knife Day, whatever you do, that information is up to you. 129 days left until the year is over.
I thought your proverb is in Kisii. You've lied to me.
I probably say it in Kisii.
Yes, then translate that English.
I'll have to do that when we wrap up until
We'll hold you to that. At the end of this show, you'll have to give us that proverb in Kisii. Then the translation can follow. I'm sure it sounds better in the original
in Kisii.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully my accent will come out as proper.
You better, it better. Let's take a look at the top story this morning. President William Ruto has a very busy diary today, including an expected meeting with the CEO of a social media site, TikTok, to discuss content moderation on the site. State House says the president is expected to tour Nyandarua and Baringo counties, where he will launch the construction of Maili Shamata Road within Ndaragwa constituency and later issue title deeds in Kabartonjo, Baringo Central constituency. The president is also expected to launch construction of the Mogotio Kisanana Road within Baringo. But perhaps his assertion yesterday that he will hold discussions with CEO of TikTok, Xu Ziqiu, today morning to discuss content moderation on the hugely popular Chinese social video app is what has generated the most interest. Ruto's meeting with the TikTok boss comes amid calls to ban the app's use in Kenya, including a petition before the National Assembly. And that leads us to the question today: is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? Is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? You can share your sentiments with us on X, formerly Twitter, at TV47 News, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. We'll be sampling your views as we continue with the show. For now, let's get the day's diary with Stanley.
Right, even Fred, as you had alluded, President William Ruto definitely has a huge day packed. President William Ruto expected to tour Nyandarua and Baringo counties today at around 10 a.m. He will launch the construction of Maili Shamata Road and the Ndaragwa constituency. While at noon, Ruto will issue title deeds in Kabartonjo, Baringo North constituency. He'll also launch the construction of Mogotio Kisanana Road, that is Mogotio constituency, and we'll be following on that to brief you. Now to matters security. The Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security is expected to meet the Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Interior and National Administration, Professor Kithure Kindiki, at noon to discuss the security situation in the North Rift and at the Kericho-Kisumu border. So definitely expect tough questions on the CS, even as he gives his answers on the same. From matters security to matters education now, the National Assembly Education Committee will be meeting with Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu on the new education funding model, which has received mixed feelings across the country. Both university students and university lecturers have raised their voices on the same. We expect to see how this will be developing. Now to matters health. Minister of Health, in partnership with UNICEF, Kenya, WHO, among other partners, are to launch a 5-day polio vaccine campaign across Nairobi, Kiambu, Garissa, Kajiado counties from 24th to 28th August this year. Now, the event is to be presided by the Health Cabinet Secretary, Susan Nakumicha. And from that also, this is to just add on to that diary. Today at around 9 a.m., we expect to see Humphrey Watanga, who will be sworn in as Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority at the Supreme Court. This follows his appointment by Cabinet Secretary of Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndungu. At around 9 a.m. we'll be following on that to give you live pictures of the same. So stick around for that. Now let's get into the dailies.
All right, let's get into the dailies this morning. A very busy page on the Daily Nation, a very busy front page. Probably with the big headline, The War Within.
Probably there's too much to say today.
Oh yes, I think it's a very busy news day coming from yesterday. Or yesterday was busy in terms of news. Has a busy front page today. The War Within, power struggle, signs of a looming cabinet reshuffle, or a storm in a teacup? Begs the question. After President Ruto recently read the Riot Act to his appointees, questioning their competence, Kenya Kwanza lawmakers have stepped up attacks on cabinet secretaries who find themselves increasingly on the defensive amid questions about their future. The story is on page 4 of the Daily Nation, and it has images of at least 4 cabinet secretaries: Ababu Namwamba of Sports, Florence Bore of Tourism, Labor, yes, Susan Nakumicha of Health, and Alfred Mutua, Foreign Affairs. Another story making it to the front page of the Daily Nation today: Jepchirchir, I am a victim too. Judy Jepchirchir, who runs a recruitment agency under investigation for allegedly conning job seekers millions of shillings, fight backs, insisting her firm secured overseas employment for applicants. She blames jealous competitors and politicians for her wars. That story is on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Still on the front page of the Daily Nation, TikTok row, Ruto to talk with tech firm's boss of explicit content. And that is our main story this morning. Also forms the basis of our question on whether the president's intervention in moderation of online content is necessary. Another story on the front page of the Daily Nation: junior police officers get 1,000 shillings pay rise as bosses pocket 11,000 shillings monthly. That story is what features on the back page of the Daily Nation today, and it has a breakdown of the salary that entry-level constables and even the highest paid constables, as well as senior officers within the police service, will be getting with the recent increments. Another big talking point from yesterday, and also features on the front page today of the Daily Nation: Oparanya grilled for 6 hours over graft. Anti-corruption detectives question ex-Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya over alleged 1.3 billion shilling loss. Another scandal on the front page of the Daily Nation: steelmakers fined 340 million shillings for unfair price fixing. As consumers lament about soaring living costs, 9 steel firms conspired to create an artificial shortage that led to a steep rise in prices. It's on page 30. You can read more on that. Other stories: Madhewangara, 13.4 million shillings cash in sacks to be deposited at CBK. Court allows police to detain suspect for 5 days. Now that's the front page of the Daily Nation. Quite a busy front page today.
It seems you're chasing the gunia, not the bag.
We've not changed. We're chasing the bag. It seems we're chasing the wrong thing all this time. And on the Standard this morning, the headline there, Oparanya in a fix over 1.3 billion shillings graft probe. Yesterday, the former Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya spent hours at the anti-corruption offices of alleged embezzlement of 1.3 billion shillings in the county, even as commission agents raided his rural and Nairobi homes, triggering protest from Azimio's side. That story is on page 2 of the Standard this morning. And on the right strip of the Standard, I will not quit, vows embattled CS Ababu. Confronted by MPs with allegations of neglecting athletes' welfare, embattled sports and youth affairs, CS Ababu Namwamba says there is no sufficient evidence to warrant his resignation. And of course, he was being grilled there by the plenary yesterday. That story is on page 2 of the Standard this morning. And unmasking untouchable Jepchirchir. It's a story that we've seen on Daily Nation today as well as yesterday. And on Standard this morning says here in 2010, Judy Jepchirchir, the director of a controversial recruitment agency in Eldoret linking youth to jobs in Qatar, was dealing in imported new clothes. Those who knew this 37-year-old described her as a crafty businesswoman who rose from poverty before briefly moving to Australia and Canada. And that story is on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. And on the top strip of the Standard, Ruto-Raila teams agree on agenda items for talks. Good news as police officers get pay rise. And in some matter sports there, Kipyegon, I was chasing history and I delivered. That is what we do have on the Standard this morning.
Right, I wish more Kenyans will be saying they're chasing victory and they actually deliver. Why Uhuru's 63 billion Kenyan shillings last mile project failed, that is on the front page of the Star this morning. So it goes with poor households unable to buy tokens, opted not to use power, putting infrastructure to waste, is on page 425. Also, the Star says audit KPLC installed cables and meters on empty land where owners were yet to build. On the top strip of the Star, matters graft investigations, Oparanya probe, ESCC strikes at heart of Raila's Orange Party. And they have some pictorials there of Talent Galoa's music festival finalists put up show. Yesterday's the whole gala of the music festivals. The bottom strip of the Star this morning, pay increase 1,255 to 9,439 Kenyan shillings more. What police officers will get a new salary review. And new headache, why more children could be having vaccine-deprived polio. All right, that is on the Star. Allow me to also look at People Daily this morning. People Daily goes with, well, the same highlights as other dailies here. Ababu must resign. Angry MPs demand. Trouble at Sports Ministry. Legislators alert to President William Ruto crucify embattled CS, accusing him of failing to ensure welfare of athletes. That is on page 4. So there's a quote there. I believe there is absolutely no sufficient ground that will cause my resignation. I am performing exemplary well as the CS responsible for this ministry. And on the top strip, main question this morning, Ruto seeks out TikTok of content. That is on page 3. President says digital platform will be regulated to ensure beneficial videos are prioritized and negative ones are controlled, and for creatives to make more money. But then again, Question arises, how will the regulation be done? On the left side, Oparanya quizzed in 1.8 billion. Graft probe. Former governor picked up over money allegedly lost during his tenure. And another interesting here, matters tourism. Higher park charges will hurt tourism. And internationally, mercenary leader killed in plane crash. That is on People Daily.
Okay.
All right. There's Taifa Leo today.
Yeah.
And on Taifa Leo, na mwamba kwenye kinywa cha mamba. That's the headline on Taifa Leo. Katika kile kinachoonekana kama njama, waziri akaangwa na upande wa serikali, upinzani ukimtetea vikali. That's the big headline there. Waziri kikaangoni, hatma ya waziri yaning'inia pembamba kufuatia maswali kuhusu utendakazi na ufujaji fedha katika wizara. Hadithi hiyo iko kwenye kurasa wa pili kwenye Taifa Leo. Tukiangazia hadithi zingine, habari nyingine leo kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo. Ruto aingilia zogo kuhusu TikTok. Rais aahidi kufanya mazungumzo na wakuu wa TikTok kuhusu maudhui chafu. Na habari hiyo iko katika ukurasa wa pili wa Taifa Leo. Kwingineko, kura zaanza kuchelewa Zimbabwe, vituo vyafunguliwa saa 2, huku Mnangagwa na Chamisa wakiwania kiti cha urais. Habari hiyo katika ukurasa wa 8. Raila Ruto wasukumwa waafikiane. Ziara ya Ruto Uingereza ni sehemu za juhudi za ziara ya Raila Uingereza ni sehemu za juhudi za kumfanyia alegeze msimamo wake. Habari hiyo katika ukurasa wa 3 wa Taifa Leo. Lakini pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, Eldoret njiani kuwa jiji kuu la 5 nchini. Kamati ya Seneti kukagua vigezo vya kufanya mji huo jiji kuu. Habari hiyo kwenye ukurasa wa 4.
You're there, how true is that?
Nilikuwa kule, Eldoret sio kubaya.
Is it up to standard?
It's actually really expanding. The roads are much better. And the entertainment industry there, I can tell you, it is really thriving. Especially on that road that heads towards Kapsabet and the airport.
Yes.
Oh, and I can tell you, everyone was there. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Kwenye spoti, Faith alenga dhahabu ya pili Budapest. Baada ya kutwaa dhahabu, sasa afukuzia nyingine ya mita 5,000. Faith Kipyegon. Habari hiyo iko kwenye ukurasa wa 19 kwenye Taifa Leo.
Heko kwake.
Hii Alhamisi.
Heko kubwa kwa Faith Kipyegon.
Yes.
Tunatumai kuwa atatuwakilisha vyema.
Na tuendelea kumshangilia na tuomwombea aweze kutwaa dhahabu nyingine.
Tuna imani kwake.
And I think that's as far as the local dailies are concerned. I don't know if anyone else has managed to trace any dailies across the border.
Do you have Business Daily before we actually...
Oh yes, there's a Business Daily.
Borders?
I think Lemuki, you can access that one.
I have Business Daily here. So Business Daily, the front page, state to legalize phone email tapping in dirty cash fight. Gives you a whole breakdown of the breakdown of penalties and director, owner or CEO. So law currently stops tapping of private communication. MPs vote to shield lawyers, notaries from snitching on clients. Gives you a number of some competition watchdog shocks. Okay, that's a different story here. Competition watchdog shocks steel industry tycoons with record fines. And on the right side of Business Daily, how 4 billion Kenyan shillings Telkom US farm Rao shut down masts, and KCB profit falls to 15 billion shillings on high costs. Safaricom Ethiopia crosses 5 million in client numbers. So Safaricom has crossed the 5 million mark in subscriber numbers in the Ethiopian subsidiary, less than a year after its entry into the populous country, where it is seeking to grab a significant market share. There is an interesting read here on the top strip. Actually, you'll find it on page 9. The impact of AI on negotiation processes between nations is poised to be profound. You can see Bitange Ndemo and Josephine Njambi. Even taking a look at Bitange Ndemo's kind of profile, that definitely looks like an interesting read for me.
Okay. Across the border in Uganda, we have the Daily Monitor, and on the front page of the Daily Monitor today, taxi fares rise as bus strike enters third day. Taxi operators have quickly taken advantage of the unfolding transport emergency to double, in some cases triple their fares, leaving those who cannot afford the new rates stuck. This is what's happening in Uganda today. Elsewhere in Tanzania, on the front page of Mwananchi, Kivumbi mrithi wa Askofu Shaw. Ni mavutano makali huku baadhi wakitajwa kuwa na sifa kumrithi. Kambi zaundwa, Daktari Shaw awaonya wajumbe dhidi ya ushawishi wa fedha. Still in Tanzania, we have the Citizen. Why only 21% of Tanzanians save to invest? Financial experts have emphasized the importance of striking a balance between saving for emergencies and investing for the future by promoting financial literacy and access to investment solutions among Tanzanians. And also on the front page of The Citizen, what political parties want before 2025 general election. And that's what is headlining in Tanzania this morning. Sasa turejee nchini kwa mambo ya karakacha.
Right, I'm trying to see for People Daily which page it will be. But let's start with the Standard, even as I get to see which page for People Daily is. Well, the Standard goes matters international in Zimbabwe there. 80-year-old, a caricature that looks like 80-year-old presidential candidate now, the incumbent president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, holding a ballot box there, the flag of Zimbabwe. If Bob did it for decades, why can't I do it for a decade? Speaking of the late now, Robert Mugabe ruled that country for years. He's really seeking, why should I also not have the privilege of sitting on that hot seat for another whole decade again? Right, that is on the Standard this morning. For the Daily Nation, you can see Fred is already smiling at it. It looks quite interesting.
19.
Even from far page 19.
19, yes.
Yes, page 19. Right, there you have it. Yes, clean it up and monetize it. He's talking about TikTok, holding a number of buckets there, written tax. He's probably having a phone call with, I think he would assume he's talking now to the CEO. What's his name again, Flora?
Chuzu.
Chuzi Chiu.
Chuzi Chiu. Yeah, so he's hoping that he's going to actually now clean it up.
And that cartoon forms the basis of our question today. Is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? What do you feel? Do you feel that the president is doing more than he should? Is his intervention in online content moderation even required? Is it necessary? What are your views? Share that with us on X, formerly TikTok, formerly Twitter rather. I think that TikTok thing got into me. Formerly Twitter, at TV47 News, that's a handle, and on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. Is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? Yes, and I think we have that cartoon up.
Yeah, we have that.
Be interesting to hear what people say. But I do hope that the president has had some time to even look at this content that runs there in the wee hours of the night.
Is he on TikTok really?
He is.
I know he's on Twitter.
Yeah, he is on TikTok.
He is on TikTok.
He is on TikTok.
Okay.
So I
The
do
daughter
hope he
is,
interacts with that content.
definitely.
Otherwise, we'll just focus on monetizing, because this government again is big on matters digital economy and monetizing content for content creators. So I do hope he has actually interacted with that content that has led to this conversation of banning TikTok.
I'm just imagining what kind of conversation he'll be having with that TikTok CEO.
Yes.
What exactly will he be telling him he needs to ban? and how he will describe it.
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
Because again, a few days ago, recently, Somalia banned TikTok. Did the Somalia leaders have to talk to the CEO of TikTok? At the end of the day, maybe the CEO says whatever happens, whatever you guys do at around 2 a.m., maybe it's profitable for me.
As
Oh,
long
it's
as
actually
money
2
is in
a.m.
my
that,
account.
I've never really...
Well, give or take,
interact.
1 a.m. to a
At least
midnight.
you appear like you've interacted with that content.
That content for quite some time.
Around that time, so he'd on his hand he'd say, well, it's profitable for me, so why should I again now try and regulate it on my end?
As long as money is
Yes,
in
I'm
my
made to
account.
understand that quite a number of people do actually make money with the kind of content they post on TikTok.
Yes.
Even during those ungodly hours,
Yes.
that they actually make money through that. And so it will be very interesting to see what kind of answers we get to our question this morning, whether the president's intervention is necessary or are there better ways of dealing with that.
Dealing with it, exactly.
And also, again, even as you come in, El Speaks Again matters timely. We've had TikTok for years now. We've had such kind of conversations for years now. Why wasn't it as timely,
Yeah, I think it's been getting worse as we move, and what is happening in Kenya, and not only in Kenya but also Africa, because when you see content from Kenyan content creators and also our neighbors from maybe Tanzania, Nigeria, it's what can I say?
More daring.
We are so daring. I don't know. I think people are doing anything to create that money. Well, when you look at some other content creators from other places and other countries, it's actually content that is informative, content that people can interact with, matters maybe education, mental health, matters tech. So people are just using the easier way of sharing maybe sexual content to make more money quicker.
There are those who argue that even on Twitter, the situation could actually be worse.
Yes.
That the kind of content being shared on Twitter, even Facebook, is actually questionable. And it's curious to see that the president did not mention those two.
Yes.
And only is going after TikTok.
Yeah. So definitely hope it's not just a wave, but look
We'll be
forward.
asking our panelists this morning the same question. This morning we'll have Honorable Kennedy Ondiek, the UDA coordinator, South Nyanza region, Daniel Orogo, governance analyst, and Kamau, political analyst. Our panelists this morning, do stand by for that conversation. You're watching Morning Cafe. Don't go too far. to the top story today. Of course, the president has a very busy schedule today. He'll be touring Nyandarua and Baringo counties, and he will be launching a number of roads and issuing title deeds. But before he actually leaves Nairobi or whichever state lodge he's at for that itinerary, he promised yesterday that because he talked extensively about social media content generation, and he promised to have a chat with the CEO of TikTok, a Chinese man, seeking to have that app moderate its content within Kenya. Now, this is a big story because it features on all the front pages of the dailies today. It's on the front page of the Daily Nation and also the cartoon today on the Daily Nation. It is the biggest talking point even online. And today we ask, is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? Let's start with you, Kamau. We've been interacting with social media for quite a number of years now, and every day we learn. Every day we learn something new. Of course, with time, there has been corruption of some of the content generated there. There are people who take advantage of social media sites to share messages of extreme political views, messages that could promote vices such as tribalism and other extreme and undesirable effects in society. But the question is, are these the things the president should be involving himself in at this time, given the fact that we have some bodies, constitutionally established bodies, to deal with such things like content online? We have some bodies even within government departments, Kenya Film Classification Board that deals with content. How come we're seeing the president dealing with such issues directly? Does it mean that it is failure on the part of some of the officers within his government?
Thank you, Fred, and good morning, viewers. On TikTok, and many would know that our generation does not really understand what it is, but we know it's a content creation app which is owned mostly by Chinese. And from what we had and what probably the president is looking at is that it has content which is not favorable for many viewers. For those who have the app, and for the viewers and for many Kenyans, some of us don't really have that application. And the president could be right in saying that I will talk to the boss to know or to regulate or moderate what so far has been seen or what has been practiced here. And from my understanding, I hear, because there was a conversation around what TikTok is, I guess even Americans don't use that application. Mm-hmm. If they have started, I am not aware because I've not been following quite well on what it is, but I hear it's generated from the data and something like arrogancy or something like that, depending on the content and the people in the area, meaning that it is tailored to give you what it is around you. It is, to me, it's not of much use. Mm-hmm. But there are two things in it. One, you use data. And when using data, you generate income for the country. There are people who are those who create those things, they earn from it. But most importantly, of the president regulating and mentioning about it, it's more important because it shows that he knows and he's more tailored to know what is happening on the ground. Mm-hmm. So that one, you give him a credit. Because it shows that he's concerned of what is happening in his country, being the head of state. So he's more aware of the things even as tiny as TikTok application. But he should go further to regulate in terms of culture, because if we form this culture of doing whatever we want, that you can air anything on whatever without mind because you're earning money out of it, that need to be regulated. That's my take. I may not know much about the TikTok thing, but the president, as you know, as a practicing Christian, and the things that we are seeing, we need to form a culture that caters my viewership and yours, so that it does not injure the other person next to you. I think that's my take.
Honorable Ondiek, on this issue, the fact that a lot of Kenyans actually make money through social media, through Twitter, now called X, through Facebook, through content creation, even on WhatsApp groups, and now TikTok. It is dicey even for the president to venture there and say, okay, fine, now we're going to control some of these things. He has been at the forefront of ensuring that online content creators are enabled by providing seamless internet. It is one of the ways of creating employment for the youth in Kenya today. Then coming back to say that we are going to have regulations around it, don't you think that it is self-defeating?
Indimuli, first of all, I want to say Kenyans know what they want as a people. And since we have a president also who knows what he wants for the people, I believe it's necessary that when a certain area is becoming so big, for me, I don't want to take TikTok as something minute. I want to take it as something which is very big, because for the country which is operating on digital economy, we have to know that that's a serious source of income for a particular group of people. And once it has proved to be a source of income to those people, we are supposed to also ensure that they are safe, they are very safe, and the platform is safe, and there's also a safety net in case of anything. The other day we were talking about when they were taking some photos of the eye, I don't know, what was it?
WorldCoin, yes.
The WorldCoin. When it was almost becoming a problem, we realized that the government had to come in very quickly, in fact, to deal with it. So I think the president is only being proactive in respect of what would later be a blame on the government, because these things are happening right before our noses. But on my personal view, I don't operate TikTok. I think one of my guys one day tried to register me there, maybe. Since I didn't sign up, so I don't know much which is happening there. At the same time, I don't follow. I only see them popping up as notifications, maybe to me, on my other platforms where I am. I'm also not on Twitter. I don't know how Twitter operates. I'm told it has changed the name. But the main thing we have to agree, I'm mostly on Facebook and WhatsApp. But the main thing we have to first of all understand our president. He is a Christian, and he came to presidency on the grounds of Christianity, and he understands what it means to be a Christian. I don't know the kind of content which is in question, because I have not seen, though I've seen certain types which are really demeaning, especially when you're seated with young people, or maybe you're seated with people you respect, and then it pops in, and then you watch the video, because they're mostly in video form. So you realize that Kenyans sometimes are reckless in how they do some things. Some of them are not very careful. And one day somebody told me that maybe the content which is in China in respect of TikTok might be different from what we have in Kenya. That the one in Kenya promotes a lot of laziness, it promotes a lot of many things, while in China they use it for technological development and other things which can promote the economy. So I think it's important the president comes in very quickly, although it ought to have started from maybe Parliament or from the Ministry of Information or where, so that they give the president advice. And I think for the president to move, it has come out of a particular advice. And he cannot just move out of the blues. So, because we know we are dealing with the presidency, and you know this is a presidency which is highly digitalized. This is presidency which actually came in based on the serious influence on social media. And I think he understands, the president understands this social media almost more than some of us. And he is always available on all platforms. You can even see our government today. It's really online. The government, every activity of the government is updated as at when it happens or when any activity happens. So I think the president is only being keen on those which are really necessary. And this is a source of income to Kenyans.
Yes.
So there is need for regulation. Every source of income, every business undertaking, everything must be regulated. Let's say, for example, TikTok fails to pay some of Kenyans based on the content. There needs to be proper regulations and legislations in respect of the same. So I believe our constitution provides for freedom of very many things, but such freedoms must always be checked. So in terms of Article 28, where freedom rights and freedoms must have limitations. Sometimes when we go overboard, we have to be controlled. And the last bit in that, we have to look at the social nature of our society. We are a socialistic society, and we respect certain ethical issues, which if someone goes beyond, like some display bad image, it might beat the real logic in our social setup.
Then the question is, because you talk about culture and society, is it possible to legislate culture? Is it possible to tell people this is how you should behave in spaces that are considered almost private? Because your social media page is yours and you may consider that this is my space. How then does the government come in to try and legislate on this? I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that as well.
Fred, I guess you can regulate or moderate culture, because culture is quite moderated. It's a moderate affair of a community. And we Africans, first starting from African way of lives, TikTok is not in our own culture. So the culture that we want to form must be founded in something. And if our culture, as my good friend has mentioned here, it's promoting some uncultured, I would put it that way, activities among us, you cannot look it into like Ma community, Kikuyu community, Kamba community. So generally, our founders or our forefathers did it well to have culture regulated. Because if you take, for example, if you go to pay a dowry in Kikuyu community or in Maasai or in Somali or wherever, they have regulated that affair to the last dot, that when you come here, you come with 100 camels or 99 goats. It has been regulated like that. But what we're seeing when we interact more with the world is that they are giving us their lives or what they've developed, which is not African really, but it is earning us money. So we need to consider, if I watch, if I practice this, where is it going to leave me in terms of a human being who, like he says, a social animal, who has got a community he identifies with. So we more need to, if the TikTok affair was to be in a manner to promote my culture, which is a Kikuyu culture, I would even campaign for it. But now, the things that are coming here, it is uncultured. So as much as we want to earn money, money should not supersede the heritage that our community and our lives has. Whatever money does well. Because even the Bible says that money answers all things. But when you look into the heritage that has been, talking from my point of view as a inherited from my forefathers in the Kikuyu community, it does not feature anywhere. So let it be a tool for education, but let it not be a tool to ruin generations to come.
Okay.
Because that's the activities that are being.
But there are those who may argue that it is simply a manifestation of deteriorating social norms in Kenya, that the app is not really to blame. It is us Kenyans and our parents, our generations, that our culture and behavior has deteriorated over time, and hence it's just manifesting on social networks.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about two forms of culture here. And when you're looking at culture itself, we look at the setup. Where did we actually come from? Tom Joseph Mboya once talked about the socialistic nature of Kenyans. We have private individual cultures in terms of ethnic groups, but we also have our culture as Kenya. There's an artist, a young artist who once sang some song in Swahili, wa Kenya tabia zetu, you know. Tabia zetu too. The nature of Kenyans. We know things which are good and things which are bad. And a few individuals might overstep, because it's always natural for human being to be in error. So they can go beyond the limits. And I believe that's why the president doesn't want to have these things stopped. Like you say, it's not applicable in America. I think it might not work in America because of maybe America-China competition. Because you know this is something which earns money. Maybe it's about superpower or maybe competition. But in Kenya, we need it. Personally, I believe we need TikTok. And since TikTok is a source of income to some of our content creators, but now that's why I believe the president moves in so that it is legislated upon or maybe moderated, so that there's a particular limit that should not be
So you
passed.
believe legislation can actually help to...
I personally believe that there should be legislation to that extent, or there should be some kind of regulation which can be done from the digital end, from the person running the program or the system, because I'm not well with computers, so I don't know how that thing comes from the camera until it passes through so that it can be watched by someone at a different end. If I knew that, then I would say there should be some interlink, someone who should gauge that this one now is beyond. Like Facebook nowadays, I see if you throw in some bad words, they tell you that is against the particular standards. So if they can set such standard that when we see some level of nudeness or some level of bad talk, then it is beyond TikTok. I think the president is well in order to proceed and take care of that in case it can be for the greater good of both the content creators and the content consumers. Thank you.
I would say this, Fred, also, just to add on what my good brother is saying. Let's postpone our excitements. What the president said and what he's saying, I'm going to look into this. Even those who are giving those applications and what they are presenting to us, if they, with the application protocols that they used to do the application, if they are postponed a little, they'll even think twice. We cannot say that whatever comes to us is good. The culture we have today, from whatever community we come from, it was, I think, thought through, and it actually is not written anywhere, but we follow because we trust in it. What is coming in the digital world is that some of these things will not affect us, but it will affect the children that we are bringing up, and we may not have a generation two. So if it's regulated in Kenya, because I know places like a country like Rwanda, there are certain digital world that don't enter their country. Because as human beings, we must be, and it is okay with that to be regulated. So I would plead with the president to really postpone that excitement and just make a little bit of stop, because now going to the legislative arm of the government to regulate digital content that is getting here, it is just that the excitement that comes with TikTok, let's look into it. We can say even, let's do it in a year. We live without it, because the creators, they have their advantage over us. And if we can just put it a stop as the practice in Russians in terms of engaging with other nations, they postpone some of their activities and say we are not going to get there. It actually gives you more power to negotiate than even agreeing, let's do it as we talk. So I think that's my take.
Yet the president is keen to widen the tax base, and part of this will include getting more revenue from online content creators. TikTok right now probably is one of the biggest monetized social media sites in Kenya. At this point, the president may not be really keen to go too far in restricting content creators. Don't you think that he's actually in a dilemma?
Yeah, I believe so far so good in respect of allowing the opportunities for Kenyans to make income out of any opportunity that comes in. And you know, where there is an income, there must be some way by which the government also must get an income. Whether he wants to look at it in a way of getting revenue, or maybe controlling what is good or bad for Kenya, or maybe taking care of what is necessary for future, I don't know so far what the president is going to discuss with the CEO. Maybe when the president will have talked to the CEO, I believe that there will be a presser that will maybe let us know what they will have discussed. So I personally would have wished that I would encourage that it be taxed, because every other area is being taxed.
Yes.
And then it be regulated, because it's a source of income and it is an engagement. There's a contractual engagement. You know, when you sign into such particular platforms, you are giving in a consideration to particular offer which is given there, and so an acceptance. And therefore, I believe that there's a contract, there's a meeting of the minds between the provider and the person giving the content. In case a Kenyan gives a good content and they don't get reward of it in terms of payment, there must be channels through which we can make such claims as an individual or as a country. And if the government that provides that platform, maybe the Chinese government or maybe the Chinese investor, is earning money out of Kenya based on that particular content, we must also see how to regulate so that that content is of value both to us and to them, not that it is single-sided. And finally, I think whichever way the government, finally the buck stops with the president. Whatever happens, whatever doesn't happen, whatever ought to happen, whatever did not happen, is all about the president. So I believe if the president has moved, he will move with the right authorities, with the right people to meet the CEO where necessary, like it will happen today. Then they will give us a pressure that upon our meeting, deliberations we did, we talked about this. Then we can now analyze what they talked about.
Shouldn't we have a proper mechanism of actually regulating social media in Kenya? That the president's intervention this time this kind of intervention may not be sustainable, waiting for the head of state to actually talk about content moderation online, because these sites come up every single day. The fact that now the president has been appraised about what is happening on TikTok, it may not really happen next time we see probably Twitter or any other social media site go astray.
I believe Kenya does not lack or drag behind in terms of regulations and laws. I think even...
or structures for that matter.
Structures are there. What we need to do is to be more functional in terms of regulating laws and going by the rule of law. Because when you go, like you go to the Communication Authority, there are enough laws to regulate all this that gets into us. At times, there is a way that the government locks the internet, and you cannot really receive, but they have a way.
Should we be heading to that direction?
That's what I'm looking at. Further, if my brother sees his fit to generate revenue from this TikTok, why can't we then charge it as we charge alcohol, cigarette, and gambling? So you give it a high tax so that anytime you click that up, it takes much taxes, like even 50% or whatever, so that people can lazily move into it, knowing that when I get there, if I'm using any internet format, be it whatever I provided to your phone or whatever activity you have, it will take more than the usual social media protocol in terms of generating revenue. It's a way that a president can work with it to even get more revenue in terms of taxing it more than the regular social media application or in a platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? That's our question this morning. You can share your sentiments on X, formerly Twitter, at TV47 News. You can also do so on Facebook at TV47 Kenya as a page. And after the break that we're just about to take, we'll be welcoming Daniel Rogo, governance analyst, onto the panel, and we'll want to look at matters cabinet, signs of a looming cabinet reshuffle, or is it just a storm in a teacup? You're watching Morning Cafe. Agency. Later issue title deeds in Kabatonjo in Baringo. The president is also expected to launch construction of the Mogotio-Kisanana Road within Baringo. But perhaps his assertion yesterday that he will hold discussions with CEO of TikTok, Xu Ziqiu, today morning to discuss content moderation on the hugely popular Chinese social video app is what has generated the most interest. Ruto's meeting comes amid calls to ban the app's use in Kenya, including a petition before the National Assembly. And so this morning we ask, is the president's intervention in online content moderation necessary? Share your sentiments on X, formerly Twitter, at TV47 News. You can also do the same on Facebook, TV47 Kenya. We're still in studio with the Honorable Kennedy Ondiek, UDA Coordinator, South Nyanza Region, Kamau, political analyst, and now introducing onto the panel this morning, Daniel Orogo, governance analyst. Good morning, Daniel. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
You've missed a very...
Arriving here very late.
You've missed a very important discussion about TikTok and the president's intervention in that. But because of time, I want us to move on to the other discussion. And it is what is headlining on the front page of the Daily Nation today, the war within. Signs of a looming cabinet reshuffle or a storm in a teacup. We've seen the kind of treatment that cabinet secretaries are receiving from Parliament, especially after the president pronounced himself on the conduct or the performance of his cabinet secretaries. And so today people are wondering, is this a sign of a looming change in the cabinet, or what is this? Daniel, let's start with you.
Well, thanks, Fred. I think you've really captured it right. From my own assessment, after the so-called, the Riot Act that was read by the president in State House, it was on a trajectory that some cabinet secretaries, were not really aware of what was taking place in their ministries. The ideal is that a cabinet secretary, heads of ministries, department and government agencies, or MDAs are in the forefront of, like the implementers of government policies. And as such, they are aware of government policies and fast-tracking this particular agenda, especially the Kenya Kwanza agenda now. But I think the direction that the president took is, it portrayed a president that was worried about the performance of some cabinet secretaries, some ministers, some permanent principal secretaries, and even the heads of different agencies. This has been, nothing happens in coincidence. I mean, you've seen thereafter a number of cabinet secretaries have found themselves in very difficult situations. One after that was not able to have a meeting with the US trade spokesperson because the issue was that America was clear that they didn't want such a person in such a meeting. Thereafter, there have been allegations from factions of Kenya Kwanza towards Cabinet Secretary of Sports and Youth Affairs. The performance of the cabinet secretaries with regards to handling the delegations that attended different sporting functions internationally. We have also seen situations where certain cabinet secretaries fire officers, security officers that probably is not aligned to their ministries. I think this points towards a direction where there is probably a confusion in the functions of government and ministers and officials with what really is taking place in their ministries. But we would not really, we can here to deduce from the ongoings. But as to whether the cabinet reshuffles or there's a looming cabinet reshuffles, what we can observe is that, of course, we've seen situations where cabinet secretaries are not really aware with what they're expected to perform in their functions. And as such, it is only expected that the head of state would crack the whip in terms, because he is coming out as one who would want to defend the manifesto of Kenya Kwanza, and he would want to see it being implemented. And the people that can do that are the ministers, are the executives, as the principal secretaries, you know, the heads of ministries, departments, and agencies. If that's really not working, then we can expect that there could be change in the ministries.
Honorable Ondieki, they say that if you want to kill a dog, first give it a bad name. Is this what you are seeing, that this is simply preparation for something bigger that's coming up?
I don't want to talk about the images I've seen, the 4 images I've seen, because depending on the names they bear and where they come from, I will not look at deeply into that. What I want to look at, the Constitution of Kenya at Article 6 does divide the country, does divide the sovereignty of the people that can be exercised at 2 levels. There's a national level and there's a county level. At the national level, we have also horizontal decentralization of power, so that we have the executive, the legislature, and also we have the judiciary. These 3 arms of government ought to operate in a way that there is checks and balances. There's a serious principle in the Constitution that we have as we speak. So the executive has to be checked by Parliament. I have seen members of Parliament talking about the functions of these members of executive. But I think we also have to look at, be fair to each and everyone. As we look into each and every minister, we also have to look at whether such allegations or issues being raised upon them are really valid. Yesterday I was discussing it in another channel. I said that the most important thing we have to first of all look at is the role of each and every minister. Are they performing their roles? And if there are challenges, where did the rain start beating us? Because I was looking at even Ababu's situation. Ababu's situation, mostly if we talk about the athletes like he's talking about, it must be an inherent challenge which is inside the ministry and not inside Ababu Namwamba as the minister. So you find that there are certain officers who have been there since the Athletics Kenya was started, since the Athletics Ministry was started, and their age has still not allowed them to retire. And maybe they are the people who are likely to be interfering. So I believe that when there is a problem, it needs to be looked into. And then Parliament should not also be moved by social media things. That when you see something on social media, you have someone that minister. I think that that one also we have to be fair. But most importantly, our ministers must know that they bear responsibility of those ministries and they have a duty to the president. And the president said very clearly, as a government, we have to deliver. And delivery means doing only that which is correct. And if it is not correct, then it must be very correct. It is not supposed to be an error, because any error might give us a bad name in the diplomatic world, like what he has said, the Minister for Trade. That was really a serious challenge. But also, we also must control these external people. They must also not come to our meetings in our country and tell us who to meet. That one means that we are still under some kind of colonization. So I think while we accepted that particular action, we also have to give a chance to our ministers so that they can deliver. Finally, when we look at the current state of the nation, we have a lot to be done very quickly so that we see things moving. We just came from the small era of making noise, so people mandamano on the streets, and the ministers are trying to put things in order. I believe that, like Ababu's ministry, there are so many other areas which are involved. It's not only athletics. There are so many things. There are youth affairs, like when we were talking about Talanta Hela and many things. He's really trying, but you see, if he's not given time to try, maybe because of some small vendetta, then we are not going to have
And you just mentioned the word there that I was looking for, vendetta, probably. Because if we could just focus on probably this issue with the sports CS, Ababu Namwamba, it comes out, it's rather curious that the level of the people who are actually criticizing him, the leader of majority in the National Assembly, the deputy speaker of the National Assembly, these are very senior parliamentary leadership. And you just wonder, is it really an issue of performance, or could there be something else? And if I may borrow Honorable Ondiek's word, vendetta probably.
Fred, my good brother, the Ababu Namwamba's goose are cooked. The guy who came up with his case is the deputy speaker of Parliament, Shulei, Boss Shulei, Mheshimiwa. And she said, anytime these guys come from abroad, they come for tea in my house. I have their data. They fly economy. They go 14 hours flight, but the officials, they go a week and they board in the best expensive hotels in the world. So it is a long time now, my brother. We stop now just sugarcoating everything and saying the data, like you said, and looking to the matter of our young people, because we've talked about TikTok. It is an application for the young people, not for us. We are talking about athletics. These are young people trying to form their life, and that will form in a generation to come. If we eat on their future, we are going to mess up everything. It was detailed and it was said in by Madame Cholet herself that even the attires, sport gears they were putting on, there was somewhere from not the original attires in the name that they put them. The Senator Chirigai, who is from Rift Valley, and Majority Leader, MP for Kikuyu, Ishongwa, they are categorical that Ababu Namwamba has mismanaged the Ministry of Sports. It has so many other things that we've not seen. We had the World Rally Championship. That's another, it will bring out some other details that will show that this ministry really has been mismanaged. So what we need to do, now the president has settled, those who, like my brother who is the coordinator of UDA, need to realize that the president has picked his team and is moving on forward. And he said actually yesterday, because I am the current now follower of the president, having gone for the dialogue with Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga, we actually have an ear to hear what he's saying. And most of the guys who are around him, they've not realized that he has picked, and some of these guys he has been around with, he's going to drop them. And he'll drop them and say, you guys, I gave you this certain assignment, I pick you up as a minister or cabinet secretary or principal secretary to deliver to the common mwananchi who we promised. But it is now the time for us to move on. If you're not going to be in this train, please step from on this stage or the next. So it is purely a way of governance. And there's something that also I've picked from the president is this, that he's a very simple guy in terms of engagement. But in terms of his firmness, and my brother had said it, he's very firm. So most of these guys you see, and yesterday, and I watched the whole interview or the debate about Namwamba, his whatevers are cooked. Mm-hmm. It is upon now who are in the executive arm of the government to warm mostly to the opposition side. Because what has happened with this current administration is that if you are in government, you don't consider the guys in the opposition of any help. But sometimes when you're heated or when you're hit by your colleagues, the only person who can save you is a guy on the opposition. Yesterday, I noted Kajwang, Mheshimiwa Kajwang and Wandai, they were smiling upon what was being done or what the activities that were the details and the debate that was going about Namwamba. Why? Because when they got there, they ignore the guys in opposition, knowing that they check and balance. In parliament, there's checks and balance between the minority and the majority. So it's upon those who are assigned to work for the government to work for all Kenyans, because if you do me a good and you extend a courtesy or goodwill to me, probably I will save you.
You know, Fred.
Yes.
I think we just need to get it clear that the process of questioning actually are interrogating the performance of a cabinet secretary. And to say so, they're expected, like my colleagues are talking about, to appear, to answer these questions when they are called, either through the quasi committees in the parliament or in the parliament, the whole of the parliament, like yesterday, Mheshimiwa Babu appeared. I, however, agree to some extent that this might be a vendetta because, one, Ababu's goose might be cooked not from a point that he is not performing, but from a point that certain factions of Kenya Kwanza really feel that this ministry should be handled by somebody from their own. Mm-hmm. And let's be very clear. The question in context is about athletics to this particular extent. People do not want to mention this. The manner at which athletes are being handled, and it was so contentious in the floor of the assembly that these athletes were not handled properly, that they bring glory to this country. To that extent, I agree. But I assume that the process in itself should not degenerate to a situation where the outcome of that is already determined, where that kind of cabinet secretary would go to because of the situation that at hand. While I appreciate that the National Assembly, with the powers, the constitutional powers it has, might interrogate and might make, a suggestion either for an impeachment or towards, right to the, executive, head of executive to make changes. But my issue is, what is the end of that process? That is my question. The other thing, as you're coming,
I'll give you an opportunity.
As you're, because, issues of data and data harvesting, because one, I have seen a lot of information going on as to whether, our cabinet secretaries are performing and to what extent. And because, my apologies, I didn't make in time, I think it's important for us to once again, affirm ourselves as a country, that has got laws, that has got policies. And let me affirm that some of this information, that are getting toward external partners, I predict that, for example, the cabinet secretary that has been the face of the first cabinet secretaries for ICT, I've seen there's a lot of contentious issue about ICT. It's quite important for us to have also the parliament calls upon the cabinet secretary for information to fast track some of this information, especially on digital superhighway, to fast track some of this information about social media issues, so that we also get it clear from this point of view.
Honorable Ondika, and I know that you want to respond to the initial discussion about Ababu, and the question is, because the kind of reaction we're seeing from Parliament, we've not seen it before, yet there are questions that have been asked about the performance of other cabinet secretaries. Exactly. When Daniel mentioned the cabinet secretary who had an issue even with a foreign government, yet he was not summoned, or at least there was not, we've not seen this kind of reaction from the National Assembly before.
Indimuli, I want to refer to what my teacher of law taught me, Dr. Mutaha Kang, said the Constitution of Kenya that we promulgated in 2010 had a breadth called constitutionalism, and that constitutionalism comes based on what is called the rule of law. As a country, we must endeavor to apply the rule of law while conducting or transacting any business of the government, either at private level or at personal level, at public level. Article 125 of the Constitution is likely to be misused, and Parliament is almost going to misuse it because they have power to summon or to call for evidence from any cabinet minister or any other member of the public. It might be abused based on the speed at which things move on social media. Or when something comes up, they want to invoke that particular article. I really think that our parliament must also look at what should we prioritize in terms of this and in terms of that. I want also to add that while we are sure that our cabinet ministers need to serve us in a particular way, we also have to be sure that we also have to receive their services in a particular way. I want to tell you that the problem in the sports ministry is not a today's problem, and it cannot be judged on a today's minister. We then need to go back to the inherent problem, and we are not supposed to build a mountain out of an anthill. If there was a problem with athletes, yes, as a country we get disappointed because our athletes have made us very proud, but they have been mistreated or maybe mishandled, or the services were not well on their side. But it does not really become the end game. It does not make the goose to be cooked. These members of opposition, they want to celebrate on anything that is affecting the government. Well, these are individuals. Tomorrow Kenyans will start fearing these serious jobs. Being a serious officer in this country has become very difficult because small things come out in social media, you are under an endless attacks. I want to add and say this. We must first of all know that our ministries have inherent problems. And I think now, let's say, for example, if somebody wants Ababu's goose to be cooked, then if Ababu goes to the ministry and now cracks a serious whip, they are the same people who will complain. Because Ababu will go and say, if these people went on a wrong flight or went on whichever, who put them on that flight? Come here, you are fired. Because you are going to cook my goose, I have to cook your chicken before mine is cooked. So will Kenyans again give him time to fire anybody who messed up here? If Ababu suspends even 20 people today who are involved, Kenyans will again start making noise. Or maybe the same parliament will start calling, because there are some individuals who have held the sports ministry at ransom. If you go to football, it is held at ransom. If you go to rugby, which was really doing well, is held at ransom. There's a big problem which I can only advise that Parliament should call Ababu Namwamba to ask him, how can we help you so that you do your job right? Let us give us a report as to why these people, this thing happened, and then we can help act, because we have a duty to you and a duty to Kenyans, and then we find that ministry, because it has to provide services to Kenyans. And if Ababu has a problem with that ministry, because Ababu actually did not buy tickets, who procured these tickets? Who gave the uniforms? Does Ababu buy?
Let's not go to the
I'm saying, just a minute. This has been a problem. Is it today's problem? Sports ministry and athletics, some of them have even been stranded abroad.
The CS is not involved in the tendering process.
Yes. So there's a person who is involved in tendering process. There's a person who is involved in particular section, even putting those people to the hotels. There's somebody, but the buck stops with him.
Exactly.
Then I want to say, as the buck stops with him, this is just one challenge. There are so many things which Ababu has done in that ministry which are also very good to Kenyans. Let us look at the pros and cons. I am pleading, even as members of the panel might be from opposition and they want anything. For them, they want anybody fired because they don't want to care the ramifications that firing or that interfering will have on the government. They would rather have the government fail than perform.
Is it true that the National Assembly could actually be misused to get rid of some people who are maybe not looked upon favorably in this instance, cabinet secretaries?
There's something I want to remind my good friend Kennedy, my brother. All politics are local. And now, the reason why we are discussing about Ababu Namwamba, the person in power today is President William Ruto. He's the President of the Republic of Kenya, and he comes from Rift Valley. And the guys that this guy represents are coming from Rift Valley. And being local as that, he cannot afford to let the youngsters from his region fail. Number one.
So it is a president.
That is what I was saying.
Okay.
Now that is a confirmed.
Yes. Now it is a good example. Those who represent sugar belt, those who represent coffee, tea, milk, to take stand for their people. The reason, and the president has said it many a time, and that's what I'm saying. Those who in UDA, like my brother here, they really don't understand president's intake and what he want to do or where he want to go. Because he says, I've given, for example, my brother Moses Kuria in the term of trade so that he can help his people and the entire Kenyans so that our economy can grow. I've given Mheshimiwa Ababu Namwamba a docket that can make young, and he looks young, so that our country can move. There's an article today in the paper that is talking about Omanyala, the Freddy guy. The Freddy guy, for the first time, he was number 7. We are not talking about what was, because my brother here want to say that docket of sports was even messed up last time. Ababu Namwamba was a CAS in the ministry, Foreign Affairs. So he knows about the ticket and getting the ticket. He cannot fire the guy who does ticketing, because that guy gets him first class and he moves him a week before the sports or event. And there's something that was said yesterday, but in Parliament by, I think, Kipipili MP. She said, the sports in question here in the tournament was for certain group, and there is the inauguration time, and each and every athlete needs to be there in inaugural and at the closing. But I don't know how Ababu Namwamba and his team.
It's not only athletics. I think.
No, we are talking. We're very particular here. Can we talk?
I'll give you an opportunity to rebut
now,
as we wrap
he
up.
says our kids, and actually she said it so well. Our kids missed the opening inauguration for the sports and the closing because there are people who are flying first class, business class, and these guys are being given economy class. Let me tell you, and I will insist, and I want you guys to get me right. I am not opposing the government. In fact, I want this government to work, and I am not there because I am
But you're fault finding.
Yeah, no, fault finding is okay.
Let's give
Fred,
Daniel and Kennedy an opportunity to wrap up this conversation
yes.
about, because so that we move to the national dialogue
Yes.
because of time. Daniel.
Well, Fred, in 2016, the issues about Rio Olympic saga, I think you remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's there was a problem about matters of huge corruption by the former CES, Hassan Wario, about the scandal that was there. The president had no option but
to fire him. Yes.
We've had, you remember when the head of state that was Uhuru Kenyatta was going to deliver a State of the National address. In his address, you know, without not really going for a presser, he fired cabinet
Ministers.
secretaries who were, you know, assumed to have misappropriated and were not handling their ministries properly. This kind and current government is not an exemptional. I think this is one thing we should get clear from this set.
The president can fire directly without using...
He can, because he is the appointing authority. You know, all these appointment goes to the National Assembly, and all these, you know, approval. So he has. So,
But they say if you want to kill a dog, give it a fire.
no.
A bad name first.
One of the things, and that's what I said, I'm trying to balance my assertion, and I said this very well. Mentioning the purported cabinet secretary, my colleague said he didn't want to put the name to the face. But you see, there is an allegation about mishandling of your ministries. And like I've said, the Kenya Kwanza government, like any other government, would want to appear to be tackling issues that they articulated in their manifesto. It's not an exemptional. Even you, if you're a head of, you'd want your manifesto to be seen going. Those who you appointed, those who you have given responsibilities, must fast track those responsibilities. So in this issue, one of the things that I have seen, I have indicated that is within the interest of the president, as Kennedy said, to be seen to be working and to functions to be, you know, done as he proposed. But what hurdles he has to face when certain cabinet secretaries seems not to understand their responsibilities, seems not to understand their roles. And Ababu's case is in context. There are other cases that we mentioned and you've alluded to. I mean, like I was saying, a certain international company walks here and collects people's data, and people are not responsible to that.
And we don't see that kind of reaction from the National Assembly.
We don't see that kind of reaction to the National Assembly. There have been issues about banditry issues. It is 1 year after the election. You know, we are headed to 1 year after the elections. I think we are probably past.
We're done.
We can't keep being on the set and saying that we need given time. I think even the president would not want to be appearing to Kenyans and telling them, give us time.
Okay.
It is time for the president and those follow suit with their responsibility.
I wish we listened carefully to Ababu's submission in Parliament yesterday. And by appearing there, it means he understood the need and the necessity of his appearance. The president is yet to talk about this thing. The president has not talked about it. The presidency has not talked about it. It is Parliament, the Deputy Speaker, and those who are talking about it, and he was summoned to Parliament. Kenyans are yet to know what actually happened. And the Kenyans also have a duty to know, have a need to know what the ministry has. What I'm talking about, we are not defending, I am not defending the government, but I look at giving opportunity to the government to implement its policies. But the main thing here is that while we look at the faces of the people who are put on those lists, look at the faces. That is now where I'm talking about. Look at the faces and the names. We are not going to go this direction, where some people, somebody wants to hijack the government by wanting because the president has not talked about it. The president appointed these people, nominated them, and they were taken to Parliament, they were vetted. If they were not capable of doing their jobs, Parliament would have said no. The Parliament approved them, gave them the clean bill of health before Kenyans, and they were sworn in. If Ababu has failed in procuring tickets, let us see his role in procuring tickets.
Okay.
If he has failed in procuring uniforms, as original as they should be, let us see his role in procuring uniforms, so that he can take responsibility. In crime, we talk about culpability. Who is culpable to what extent?
Okay.
You cannot be culpable to an act committed by another person without your knowledge, or ought not to be in your knowledge.
And on that note, we sum up the discussion on that.
And he said,
Sholei does not work in that.
No, listen.
Sholei does not work in that.
What I'm saying is
how
this,
do we
my
know whether
brother,
she had interest in buying?
I want to
Speaking
put
about
it.
the
Gentlemen,
She might
we are
have
done with
Are
our
you not seeing the
discussion.
What I'm saying is
Speaking about-
there is a letter that was given to, that is written to the Parliament, and he was
The
told to
opposition
withdraw.
wants something that may fail the
Gentlemen,
government.
gentlemen,
that's all.
we are done with that conversation. Let's move on to the other one because of time. We need to discuss this as well. This is huge, and it's going on at the Bomas of Kenya, the Dialogue, National Dialogue Committee. And I'm reading this headline on page 4 of the Standard. Team comes up with 5 points for Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. And I've seen elsewhere there's a pressure on the two leaders to actually agree. There's a lot of talk going around about what the agenda should be. And if I may just go through the list as the Standard has given us. A member of the technical committee who sought anonymity said the cost of living and social economic issues, 2/3 gender rule, national unity and governance, checks and balances in government have been clustered into one agenda. Yeah? Electoral justice and related issues like reconstitution of IEBC, boundaries limitation, audit of 2022 election is another agenda. Second, entrenchment into the constitution of CDF, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, that's NGAF, Senate Oversight Fund, is another agenda. And the proposal to entrench into the Constitution the Office of the Leader of Official Opposition and Prime Cabinet CS, another agenda, and also fidelity to political parties for discussion, another agenda. It is the way they've clustered this agenda that is interesting. Of course, discussions on this panel have deliberated and decided that the cost of living was a non-issue for that kind of national dialogue. But issues to do with the 2/3 gender rule, national unity, being clustered under that, it also shows the level or the ranking in as far of the agenda in as far as they are concerned. Electoral justice, that kind of ranking. So it would appear that issues to do with the entrenchment of the Office of Leader of Official Opposition and the Prime Cabinet Secretary could be among the top points of discussion for this, which leads to the same question. It appears that the main issue here is a possible relook at the Constitution. Don't you agree? Going by how they've clustered this agenda.
I believe so. It will be a constitutional moment for all Kenyans. And before I put into what really the matter is, it has come upon us as Kenyans to start agreeing more in the things that matters majorly to us, because this is not the first time that Kenyans are sitting down to talk about these things. I remember in the 1960s, the KANU issue came into play, and Kenya prospered after that moment. Then after 2007, immediately that's when the economy picked up. And I would say this, not that, because my brother is saying that we are in opposition, I would say it for the first time, because of this national dialogue that has started. Some of us who were in the other side opposing the government, we are now inclining our ears to just get to hear what the government want to do and how can we help one another, not because you're in the government or not, so that the cost of living, as it's mentioned, it is not going to come through when we are on the opposing side, my brother Kennedy. It is when we agree and we can save more time in our trade, that can save more money, we can have, at least say, we have a country together. Because a long time ago, there was a story of a house divided among ourselves, or among themselves those days. And when Kenya is divided in the middle, a lot, we might be talking about the cost of living, but this is just what we need to do is to dislodge this division and come together, trade among ourselves so that we can put money in our pockets. Sometimes it's not some a jargon in economic matters. It is how far can we agree, because we accept that there were elections in last year, a year ago. Now we are not counting 5 years to go to 2027. We are counting about 4 years. And you know, 1.5 years is usually campaign time. So what we need to do, we need to get our acts together. My brother, you don't need to look at me as an Azimio or opposition towards the government. In fact, what is needed more on the guys in the government is to persuade who never agreed with them and probably never voted for them, so that they can get together and say, can we work out this thing so that when we get there in 2027, we can agree more. The cost of living is going to come down when you, Fred, and myself, my Fred Kennedy, and my brother here, we agree more, because we are going to pass what is needed for us to do without any antagonizing affairs like the simple matter my brother said about Mandamano and people dying, and it will become the least of our concern. And then there's something we call national unity in terms of governance. The reason why someone from the government cannot get support from the minority or opposition side is because we are not reaching out to one another. What I know, and it's more importantly, that this country needs to reach out to one another so that we can get our base in order. In East and Central Africa, Kenya is a giant. But if we keep on fighting and not agreeing and not persuading one another to stay in the same house as a with common interest, we are going to lose our grip.
Daniel, a lot has been said by various, listening to various voices, especially from Kenya Kwanza's side in the last few days, on whether or not these talks will actually be consequential. The deputy president himself asserted that the real talks have already happened, and whatever is happening at Bomas of Kenya is just window dressing. Looking at this kind of agenda, do you agree with him? The way they've clustered the agenda?
Well, I think going by the assertion of the deputy president and the cluster, just like it's been captured on the papers. Well, I read two things. One is there are possibilities according to the deputy president, that there are possibilities of having these national talks going on to for him is to buy time, that there are already a conversation, that has been taken in Mombasa, and the two leaders from both camps are agreeing. Possibly not. What I know, Fred, is that there is an itching that comes with this kind of conversation, in a sense that the president might be, reading from the mood of the president, he is for the idea that there needs to be a national conversation. And looking at the precedents from the last regime, just before the handshake and after the handshake, the former president, deputy president, now the president, was having a mixed reactions to the pre-handshake and post, in a sense that he was blowing cold and hot about that handshake, but also appearing was supporting Uhuru Kenyatta in reaching out to Raila, but also cautious about it. It seems Gachagua is headed towards that direction, the acknowledgement that indeed these talks are taking shapes, and by the fact that it might, the outcome of it might might render this kind of his relevance, might render his position to be relevant once these two leaders are reaching out politically. But going to the talks, that is my mood politically, but now on the technical committee, on the cluster of this issue. While I finally agree, and I've been addressing this equally on a different platform, I finally agree that there is something to talk about. We have been having the who, but we have not having the what for a long time. My friend has alluded to going by the history of talks and post-election agreement, every after election. Reading from 1992's, reading from IPPG, reading from 2007 post-election violence, we have the people. Already there's always, Fred, there must always be somebody. We rush in to propose these names here to sit. But then you are proposing names to sit here with no agenda. Mm-hmm. Agenda comes later, which is very, very, very unfortunate. While now I agree that there is an agenda to talk about, and the cluster of agenda actually points towards a direction that there's a possibilities of having a plebiscite in this country again. Mm-hmm. For once is again. And the two leaders seems to be agreeing on certain issues, that one, there needs to be an electoral justice. There needs to be, a review of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, which for me, I also disagree with to some extent, that we are making the same mistake. Because always and each and every post-election period, this particular issue is left to the politicians.
to decide on the fate of IEBC. And then if they do not agree in another election, again another committee sits to decide it. Look at the history of what I've talked about. 2007, post-2007, after handshake, including of this in the BBI, now again the failed bipartisan talk, this was an issue, it has appeared again. Looking at that trajectory, it seems that it is something that is not going to end. So for my opinion is that while certain functions of Kenya Kwanza, are particular, cautious about this talk, and to them, I'm reading from the mood, the success of these talks might provide a political, blow to their position, in that would spell out what is happening after and headed to 2027. I see that happening.
Honorable Ondieka, in 3 days' time, that will be on Sunday, we'll be marking the 13th year since we promulgated the Constitution, August 27th. Yes, we are now talking about the possibility, and he mentioned the possibility of going for a referendum. Do you agree that probably on that, if at all it is a possible result of these talks, that we need a convergence as a country of even the political minds, and hence the necessity of the talks at Bomas?
Yeah, based on the state at which our country is, I believe that it will be inevitable to have a referendum. It will be necessary, according to me. There will be a necessity, especially now that we have had the Constitution for more than 10 years. It is necessary that we evaluate the pros and cons, challenges that are rising out of it, and what as a country we have achieved. Because there was a terrible mistake we did as a country to go pure presidential system, whereby we removed the leader of opposition in parliament, making many people, those who have lost, to be purely jobless, and now they can only be walking around the funerals, Harambes, or on the streets, airing their views, because they have no opportunity to air that view through a proper channel in parliament. And I think that was a serious error, and as a country it is something we need to discuss, that parliament must be coordinated in terms of opposition and also in terms of government. I want to look at the cost of living. Should have been the first thing on that list, in my view, and it should have been independent. I would have not wished that it be merged with others. But since they are all at Bomas, and they have agreed, both opposition and the government, meaning that opposition also don't have a problem with the cost of living being merged together with those many, it means cost of living was not even their agenda. Their agenda was electoral justice. And you have realized that they have really tried to bring audit of last election into that list. As a Kenyan, I want to make the following remarks with respect to this. The two things which should be urgent today in Kenyan discussion, whether it is national dialogue, whether it is conversation between who lost and who won, cost of living should be number one. And then the most urgent thing we need to address quickly is that IEBC should be constituted as fast as yesterday, because there are by-elections which are due and they cannot be conducted because there is no properly constituted IEBC. We need to go there. Entrenching CDF is important because that is devolving further funds to the counties, and the UDA government is on a bottom-up transformation agenda. It wants the money to go down to the villages, into the rural, so that people can feel the government service delivery there. And that's why the government tried to ensure that they dispatched the CDF fund on time, they dispatched the county funds on time, so that entrenching this is very important. I want to make it very clear that as a country we can also not talk about post-election dialogue every time. We conduct an election and then somebody or some people, and the problem is that it has been somebody. Let us just be, it has been, when I talk about it, it becomes somebody, and it becomes too repetitive that it becomes even tiresome to Kenyans. We have to agree that in the Constitution, we have the process of arriving at a particular candidate. And we also have a process through which that candidate becomes a winner of a given election. Let us look at this scenario, where if the president who won has to sit together with the president who lost, so that they see how to bring themselves onto the table, does it mean that the governor who lost in Nairobi should also come with the governor who won in Nairobi to start discussing? The MCA who lost in Kibiri ward should also come and sit with another one who lost somewhere. So that, is that what we are talking about? What is going on in Kenya today is not even a national dialogue. Because this team, I don't know whether it is a technical team or it is a political team. Because is this team technical? Why do we call it technical?
There's a political team assisted by
a technical team
behind it.
But the agenda should have been there so that we know who is likely to address this agenda very well.
Okay.
Most conclusively, during the launch of BBI, the then Deputy President William Ruto tried to address this issue amidst a crowd which was more of Azimio than Kenya Kwanza at that time. And he asked a very serious question. And the Deputy President then, currently President, was very passionate. He asked, how have we addressed this issue of winner take it all? Have we addressed it? And the crowd that time said, yes, we have addressed it. Because they knew they were going to win that time.
Gentlemen,
so
because
the winner take it all situation cannot be addressed by merely sitting at Bomas. I want to beg the opposition of this country. You can do your role well in parliament. Lobby in parliament, change things in parliament. We are not going to have a national dialogue to see how to run a government. There's a government in place which must do.
Gentlemen, because of time, I'll give you each 60 seconds for your final thoughts, starting with you, Kamau.
Thank you so much, Fred, for this time, and majorly Kenyans for listening to us, watching us. And on my closing remark is that my good friend Kennedy, the president has left and has gone to the field to talk to the Kenyans, and he wants Kenyans to get to hear what is up for them, for the bottom up. The only person who will be telling us on how the cost of living will be improved or it will be made sure that Kenyans can afford their living well is Kenya Kwanza government. It is not us who are joining you now in the dialogue. And I would plead with majority of Kenyans, and I'll say this, get persuaded, my brother Kennedy and majorly Kenyans. Talk to your neighbor who you are not agreeing more. Compromise so that this country called Kenya can be for all of us, because it is enough. And for the first time, like I said earlier, Fred, is that we've gotten a chance to have a conversation with the government. And we want to support the government to the end so that if it delivers, the benefit will be all of us, where we'll be after 2027, even 50 years to come. So it's upon us to be one Kenya. And when we are one Kenya, we move together without seeing that this person is not a Kenyan more and I am more Kenyan, so that we don't feel entitled more than your neighbor. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Daniel?
Well, I see an opportunity to address matters that involves post-electoral, issues that always have conflict around every time. I propose that perhaps it's time to open up this conversation to many stakeholders so that it becomes a national dialogue that is all-inclusive. And to that extent, you will get the opinion of young people, you will get the opinion of trade unionists, you will get the opinion of religious leaders, you will get the opinion of so many people. There is a time for these technical talks or this national dialogue to have people-centered approach. Because like I've said, and my colleagues have agreed, that an affair like this is too expensive to leave to politicians. And therefore my urge is that the two leaders who are the main protagonists of this talk, I appeal to them for the purposes of continuity, for the purposes of inclusivity, to open this talk for a number of stakeholders. The more diversity, the better the opinion, and then we do not have these cycles of talk after every election.
Finally, thank you so much, Daniel Orogo. Finally, Honorable Kennedy Ondiek, you wrap it up for us.
One day, Professor George Saitoti, the late Professor George Saitoti said, there comes a time when the country is more important than an individual. There comes a time when our constitution must also be supreme. There also a need for us to realize that we have a country to be governed, and that this country has a president who was elected through a process which was declared with issues that were raised were cleared by the Supreme Court, which is the highest court on land. We need also to give opportunity for these people, because it was a competition. As a result of competition, there must be a result, and the result was there, whether it is contested or not. Again, we cannot be in a country where results are contested every day. we also have to agree that particular times, there comes a time when you have to let go. Azimio must give Kenya Kwanza time to deliver on their manifesto. And this one will only come if they allow themselves to get to the opposition where they actually belong. And if there's need to have their leadership inside parliament, then as Kenyans, we need to lobby to have the official leader of opposition in parliament. And that's all. We cannot have a dialogue of who gets what after an election is conducted. We cannot have unity of everyone because the government has to have an opposition to give an oversight part of it. Finally, on my view, I pray to Kenyans that this is a government that President William Ruto has demonstrated. By the way, they have started to transact. There might be issues left, right, and center. But I believe cost of living will only go down if we get to farming. We also improve in our struggles as a people. When we utilize the opportunities we have, like the youth are utilizing the digital economy, people are taking loans from banks and investing it. We only need to talk about if Azimio have got a solution, which they have, a package that could make the country better. If they are of goodwill, then they need to present that purposely to this committee so that this committee can evaluate and tell the president, listen, these people have a point here.
Okay, thank you so much.
If you want
Honorable Kennedy Ongie, QDA Coordinator,
Succeed
South
with
Kenya as a region, political analyst Kamau Kamau, and Daniel Orogo, governance analyst, giving us their take on the big discussions in Kenya today. We've discussed issues to do with TikTok. We've discussed issues to do with a possible cabinet reshuffle or otherwise, and now the national dialogue. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for that. And you'll allow me to read this editorial commentary. Now, exactly 1 week ago, 28-year-old Robert Gituhu died at the Coast Teaching and Referral Hospital hours after setting himself ablaze. His act was a protest against joblessness and the high cost of living. Now, the tragic death of the engineering graduate brought to the fore the general sense of disillusionment among the youth in Kenya today, who face the harsh reality of high unemployment and lack of opportunities despite their educational achievements. Gituhu's self-immolation serves as a heart-wrenching reminder of the complex web of challenges that young Kenyans confront on a daily basis. It signifies not just his personal desperation, but also the collective frustration and helplessness that many in his generation feel. The question that must be asked is whether his tragic death will lead to any meaningful change. Will his sacrifice be in vain, or will it prompt a serious reckoning of the issues plaguing the Kenyan youth? Yet, it is not just about Gituhu. It's about the thousands of young lives being affected by a situation that remains largely unaddressed by those in power. Who is truly listening to the cries of this young generation? Are the policymakers and authorities taking the time to understand the underlying causes of this disillusionment? Now, recently, over 500,000 young qualified Kenyans opted not to take up opportunities for higher education, a further manifestation of the youth's skepticism about the benefits of education in the face of grim unemployment. This should worry us. The death of Robert Gituhu should not be allowed